Can you read that favor? Good evening. Good evening. The McCourt School of Public Policy at Georgetown University welcomes you to the 2025-2026 Whittington Lecture featuring U.S. Senator Chris Coons of Delaware. Our program will begin in a few minutes. At this time, we ask that you please silence all cell phones and electronic devices. Georgetown University is committed to standards promoting speech and expression that foster the exchange of ideas and opinions. While it is recognized that not everyone may share the same views as the speaker, it is expected that everyone in attendance respect the right of the speaker to share their views and ideas by not causing a disruption to the event's activities. At the conclusion of this event, there will be a question and answer session during which you may ask questions and engage in dialogue. Please be sure to phrase your comments in the form of a question. In the interest of time, we ask that each person be concise and ask only one question. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Carol Graysons. I'm the Dean of the McCourt School, and I wanted to welcome you here tonight. Tonight's lecture is particularly special to our McCourt community. It is held each year in honor of Professor Leslie Whittington, who, along with her husband and two young daughters, died on September 11th when their American Airlines flight crashed into the Pentagon. Leslie was a beloved member of our faculty and community. She was known for her passion and teaching and for her dedication to public service. The Whittington Lecture and the Whittington Scholarship allow us to celebrate her memory and the values that she embodied. Tonight, we are honored to have Senator Chris Coons of Delaware as this year's Whittington Lecturer. Throughout his career in public service, Senator Coons has emerged as one of the Senate's most respected voices on foreign policy and technology. He currently serves on the Senate Appropriations, Foreign Relations, Judiciary, Small Business, Entrepreneurship, and Ethics Committees. He vice chairs the Ethics Committee and serves as a senior Democrat on the Senate subcommittee in charge of the nation's defense spending. His thoughtful and ethically grounded leadership on critical policy issues facing our nation makes him an exceptional speaker for our Whittington Lecture tonight. After Senator Coons' talk, McCourt Chair Diane Whitmore-Schausenbach will be moderating a Q&A session, after which we will invite everyone to join us for a reception. It's now my pleasure to welcome to this year's Whittington Scholar, Britney Cheung. She's a second-year student in our Master of Public Policy program. Britney?
Good evening. My name is Britney Cheung, a Master of Public Policy student and a member of the class of 2026. It is my honor to introduce this year's Whittington lecturer, U.S. Senator Chris Coons of Delaware. For the last 15 years, Senator Chris Coons has earned a reputation as a principled progressive and pragmatic lawmaker focused on some of the most important issues confronting the nation, particularly as one of the Senate's most respected voices on foreign policy and technology. He currently serves on the Senate Appropriations, Foreign Relations, Judiciary, Small Business and Entrepreneurship, and Ethics Committee, of which he is the vice chairman. He is also the senior Democrat on the Senate Appropriations Subcommittee on Defense. Senator Coons' commitment to making a difference for everyday Americans has earned him praise from the Washington Post, which proclaimed that he has, quote, emerged as a thoughtful senator, one who makes you feel good about politics, end quote. The Hill and GovTrack named him one of the top 3 most productive senators for his ability to build consensus and deliver results. Before joining the Senate, Senator Coons served for a decade in the New Castle County government in Delaware. As council president and New Castle County executive, he earned a reputation for delivering real results on behalf of Delawareans, preserving critical community services while protecting the county's finances during the financial crisis. He also has worked with the National Coalition for the Homeless and the I Have a Dream Foundation, helping at-risk youth stay in school, get to college, and build their lives. Senator Coons is a graduate of Amherst College with a BA in chemistry and political science. He earned his law degree from Yale Law School and a master in ethics from Yale Divinity School. I'd like to thank Senator Coons for joining us at the McCourt School this evening, and I look forward to his remarks.
Thank you, Brittany. Thank you, Dean. Thank you to everybody from the Georgetown community, from the McCourt School, from the broader community. Thank you to my dear friend of more than 40 years, Jeff Urbach. And thank you to the very talented folks who worked with me who helped prepare these remarks, particularly Iris and others who have tolerated my careening around from point to point. We are in a critical, I'd argue, defining moment for the United States right now. A moment when we are going to decide whether our nation is principally committed to elevating and celebrating cruelty or compassion. I know that as you come this evening, you're bringing with you a lot of other things. You're not just arriving with an open mind. You've probably wrestled through a lot of other issues today. You've probably been looking at the news. You've probably got some intense feelings about the state of the world and where you are as an American and where we're headed going forward. If you're anything like me, the memories, the images, the sounds of the shootings of Renee Good and Alex Preddy are echoing in the near recent past. The picture of Liam Ramos being led away, still wearing his little blue beanie. And many of you here are getting degrees in policy. And I would argue that you're getting to see a real-time examination of what good and bad policy looks like and what the lived human consequences of elections and policy results look like. So in my view, as someone who's now spent 25 years as an elected official, I never imagined that'd be possible. I think we have both a chance, an opportunity, and a challenge in front of us. A challenge to figure out how to reimagine our relationship with the world. I wrote the bill that created and funded the USAID budget in the last 2 Congresses. USAID, now the agency formerly known as the United States Extended Hand to the World, and as someone who serves on the Judiciary Committee, which writes immigration policy. I spent a lot of time looking back at what might have been in terms of a bipartisan resolution to our badly broken immigration system, and I'm living through the consequences of a political campaign where I was the co-chair that failed to win the presidency, and then today's consequences on the ground and in terms of real lives. So we have a challenge and an opportunity in front of us to not just wallow in the ashes or the division of the current moment, but to build up a vision for a different future going forward and to see whether it's embraced, whether we can jointly build a new consensus and a new path forward. I've spent some time thinking about the vision of my party. I'm a Democrat, in case no one picked that up. And just true confessions, I've been a Democrat for a long time now, actually. And I've heard a question that has sort of echoed in the back of my head now for years. When I first heard it, I was standing on the sidelines of a community pool with my young kids competing, and a guy standing next to me who was a blue-collar tradesman, a member of a building trade union. And he said, you know, when did you Democrats stop caring about working people? Wasn't the first time I'd hear that. Certainly wasn't the last. And the dynamics of the last election show what has been a slow and steady loss of trust and support among working people in the United States for the Democratic Party. Most elected Democrats like me think that that's what we're principally doing as we craft policy in the Capitol, which is there. See, figuring out what direction we're going is one of our core challenges. Over there. We think we're fighting for working people, but a majority of the working people of America don't think we're fighting for them. And so I've spent some time thinking through what is it that our party stands for. And part of how I approach this is because, as Jeff knows, I didn't start as a Democrat. Professor Urbach and I got to know each other as freshmen in college when I was a toothache of a man. I was someone who helped co-found the Amherst College Young Republicans. And I was truly blessed to have friends like Jeff and Barry and Hera and others who, instead of simply shutting me down and telling me I had no idea what I was doing or I was offensive and canceling me in the common parlance, asked me questions. Why do you think that? Where's that coming from? How do you think that will impact us and our world? My parents were Republicans. Their parents were Republicans. My family had been Republican literally since the party was founded. So it was unthinkable that I might be a Democrat. And yet, despite my parents' best intentions, going to college taught me to question not just other things, but to question the assumptions that I'd been raised with, and to question some of the worldview that I'd been raised with, and to re-examine it, and to reconsider it. And in order to have a chance to actually see myself, my nation, and the world through a new lens, I took up an opportunity to go study at the University of Nairobi in Kenya. Now, today, everybody studies abroad all the time, everywhere, but at the time, this was exotic and life-changing. The radical hospitality I experienced among the families that I lived with, the dramatically different worldview and set of priorities, the profound faith that I experienced among Kenyans who I lived with and spent time with really genuinely transformed my life. When I came back, my college debate partner, now a Jesuit theologian, picked me up and took me to the South Bronx and drove me around and was peppering me with questions. You've seen huge inequalities in wealth in Kenya. You haven't confronted the challenges of our own nation. Explain to me, young Republican, how in your worldview and framework this happens. How is this just? How is this sustainable? How do the folks who live here deserve this? Just a few miles from literally the richest people on earth in Manhattan. So I was taught by my parents, who were people of faith, who engaged in quiet but determined service through prison ministry and welcoming refugees, that we ought to work hard, play by the rules, sky's the limit, children will do better than their parents, that opportunity was a real anchor for the United States, that security mattered. They supported security at home and abroad. But I'd been raised as a Republican to also think principally about liberty, about lower taxes, less regulation, set loose the individual. Remember, this was the era of Ronald Reagan. My time in Kenya caused me to focus more on justice and to ask the question about what delivers justice in a biblical sense, in a Torah sense, in a gospel sense, and to begin to privilege justice over liberty. And that summer of 1984, when I watched the two-party conventions to my own shock and surprise, listening to then Mario Cuomo, governor of New York, I realized I was a Democrat. When I confessed this truth to my grandmother, she disowned me. And thus began a years-long debate about what are the core values of our nation, of our faith, of our family, and of our people. And I want to take a moment to talk about how I think that can give a framework for rebuilding a connection between the Democratic Party and what we have historically understood ourselves to be connected to, and a positive future vision. I could stand here and spend the entire next half an hour telling you why I think Donald Trump is bad for America, why he isn't keeping his commitments to lower your costs and to make America safe again and to make America great again. But I think that's almost literally a waste of time. It's important that we do it. It's important that someone push back and challenge and contest. But in terms of building a future for the Democratic Party, Hillary Clinton tried that. Do you not notice he's bad? Do you not notice he's a bad guy? Do you not notice he's got bad plans for you? That was not a winning message. I think that was kind of the closing argument as well of the campaign that I was co-chair of, despite a very talented candidate in Kamala Harris. A closing argument that is essentially this guy's going to do really bad things isn't enough. We also have to have a common, simple, accessible framework for what we want to do should the American people ever hand us the keys again and let us do anything. Because right now, the Democratic Party is less popular than cockroaches and cancer. And I'm not so sure we've got a chance against cockroaches. So I've written a piece in Democracy Magazine, and I'm excited to have a chance to talk with you about it tonight, where I suggest opportunity, security, and justice as a simple, positive frame for rebuilding the Democratic Party and reconnecting in a relationship of trust with the folks who we believe we're fighting for. Opportunity is a core principle of the United States, of its history and its future, a belief that social mobility is possible, that your future isn't determined by your zip code, that if you work hard and play by the rules, you can get ahead, and more importantly, so can your kids. Millions and millions of people have come to this country seeking opportunity, and people who believe they are stuck, overlooked, left out, or going backwards have moved from believing the Democratic Party best supports their future to the Republican Party under Trump. If we don't regain that narrative, if we don't show that we believe in opportunity and deliver proposals that actually make that real, I don't think we have a future. I also think being a party of opportunity means abandoning being a party that only seems to care about regulation and constraint, and that principally focuses on resentment for those who are successful. I think if we focus on a strong floor and a high ceiling, we end up in a place where we are fighting for things that more Americans believe in. Everybody deserves safe, sanitary, decent housing, a basic, solid education, the fundamentals of healthcare, the opportunity to work hard and to save for your future and to advance your kids' possibilities. High ceiling, but strong floor. And we need a stronger floor. Most of the fights we've had this past year have been about making healthcare more accessible, making daycare more affordable, making college more of an opportunity for everyone, not just the few. Security is a bedrock of national well-being. And if folks don't believe you care about their security and their kids' security, they don't listen to you about anything else. As someone who served in local government, I'll tell you, what people care about first is security. And that's not just physical security, terror that masked agents may show up at any moment, break down your door, take your child, or deport you. It's also physical security that you don't go to bed worried sick about your bills, as well as security that you don't get mugged on your way into work. So we need to fight for every American to be secure in our homes, in our borders, and our bodies. We need to reimagine security in a way that actually speaks to Americans and meets their moment. National security, yes, but also fiscal security. A chance to know that your retirement is secure, that everything you've worked hard for isn't just going to go away, that the rule of law is real, and that what you've managed to accumulate for you and your family is going to be there for the long term. Justice, which we get to last by earning our way to it, is broader than some of the purity tests we have focused on as a party recently that frankly would have turned me off as a young new convert to the Democratic Party. It's a broader opportunity to choose our families, our homes, our futures, to speak our minds, to protest, to stand up for what we believe in, but also economic justice, as the gospel speaks to the rights of the least of these, those who are on the margins, those who are otherwise not participating in the promise of opportunity. Justice, at the end of the day, is what made me a Democrat and is what should attract others to be Democrats and is what should win us the hearts and minds of the people of America. But security without justice, we'll go through these for a minute. If you offer justice without focusing on people's security, they shut you out. If you convince them that you don't care about their security, all you want to do is lecture them about justice, they're going to focus on the security. You can deliver security through a heavy-handed state. You're watching that unfold right now. But that doesn't deliver a sustainable, humane, and just society. You can have opportunity without justice, but then you have yawning inequality, where the few get dramatically richer and the majority see no hope and no future. I don't believe that's sustainable. I think we can deliver opportunity and security as long as we look at it in the end through the lens of justice. Let me just take a few minutes and touch on a couple of examples of how we might apply opportunity, security, and justice to a couple of issues. One that's right in front of us is immigration. We have to remake the immigration debate in a way that helps the real concerns of a majority of Americans be heard. Those who think that immigration policy has harmed their own security and their own opportunity. I spent years in local government, and listening to the guys from the building trades, their number one complaint was that they were able to get less work and were less well compensated for that work because there were people in our community who were not there legally who were taking their jobs. We cannot just ignore that concern. I hear from parents all over Delaware that by having a wide open border, we put their security and their children's security at risk. I'd say we lost the last election principally on cost and security. We cannot ignore that legitimate concern that folks who are here need to be here following the rules and being safe, and that folks who commit violent crimes, whether native-born Americans or people who've arrived recently, actually face consequences. But we need to celebrate and welcome and cherish the contributions of immigrants to our nation. We would not be America without immigrants. We would not be a steadily improving and richer and more diverse and more impressive and more engaging America without immigrants. And demonizing immigrants, marginalizing immigrants, shutting down the doors to refuge and to opportunity in America to immigrants is to turn our back on what has made America and built America. And so finding a balance that celebrates the very best in America and who we are and what our heart is made of, which is principally informed by immigration, while still recognizing there are some legitimate flaws and failings in how we have imagined immigration and how we have delivered on it. That hopefully ends up with an immigration policy that helps bring in those who are contributing to our nation, that helps find those who deserve refuge in this country and restore our role as the place of security for those seeking to flee oppression, but that also finds a way to make sure that a majority of Americans are safe in their homes and are clear about the priorities of our national government. That is very hard in this current moment where each side screams at the other and neither side seems to be willing to compromise. I will say this, a majority of Americans today believe that ICE engaging in masked roving patrols is making them less safe, not more safe. And in the next 2 weeks, we'll see whether we can find a bipartisan compromise on what policing looks like in a democratic republic. That path is going to critically define what future there will be for responsible, balanced, bipartisan changes in immigration policy. That's principally about justice, about whether there is an ill-informed and inhumane attempt at deporting 14 million people, the overwhelming majority of whom contribute to our country. So we have to recognize that immigration has complex underlying drivers. But the average American looks at it through the view of how does this impact my opportunity and my family's opportunity? How does this impact my security and my family's security? And if you prove you care about those, then you get to talk about justice. We are a nation principally committed, I believe, to compassion and to justice. There's a lot of proposals I've worked on and been involved in over 15 years. I was one of the bipartisan group that tried to deliver a solution in the first Trump administration, only to have him flip on it literally the day of the vote. Looking forward, there's a bipartisan bill in the House called the Dignity Act that Congresswoman Escobar and Congresswoman Salazar from West Palm Beach, South Florida, former Fox host, and from El Paso, Texas, liberal Democrat, have written together that I think invests in strengthening border security, provides a path to legal status for the undocumented, improves and sustains legal immigration, speeds up the processing time and reforms the asylum system. It makes a lot of changes that I would support and champion if only I can find a Republican to co-sponsor it with me. I'm going to take two other quick examples and then we'll move to Q&A, if that's good with you. President Trump ran on affordability. President Biden was bedeviled by challenges that costs were too high. And one of the costs that impact working families day in and day out is being able to care for children and parents. Paid family and medical leave. A number of states have experimented with it. Delaware is one of them. Some more purple states. We've got the law on the books federally. That was a big development 2 decades ago, but it's not paid. You can take unpaid family medical leave for a medical crisis, to care for an ailing or soon to die parent, to adopt a child, or to care for a child who has a critical medical issue, but you got to take 12 weeks off from being paid, and most families can't afford that. So it's a right without a meaningful opportunity to use it. Today, 3/4 of American workers don't have paid family or medical leave. And too often people lose their jobs because they have to do something to care for their family. This is a simple, fundamental economic justice right that allows families to care for each other in a way that actually prevents often much greater costs for society by having a crisis get to the point where it's addressed in the ER or the mortuary. And it allows us to have values where we care for each other, where we allow each other the grace of time off in order to care for those closest to them. The largest companies tend to provide this as a benefit, but the vast majority of employers do not. And allowing caregiving for family members has lots of secondary benefits for opportunity for others. Keeps unemployment low. It reduces reliance on other safety net programs. It grows our economy. It contributes to opportunity. In terms of security, few things as a parent are more scary than having your whole life unravel, losing your job, taking on more debt to take care of your sick child, or to take care of your mother as you move her into a memory care facility. Last, justice. I can't think of a more fundamental way to deliver justice for the folks who work the hardest in our society, who take the greatest risks, who do the hardest jobs, who are at the very margins of our economic structure, that they also have to sacrifice their love for their family in order to keep those jobs. That's the sort of foundational justice I think the Torah speaks to. Senator Gillibrand of New York has a family act, catchy title, I know, that would give 12 weeks of partial income for all workers at all levels for family and medical leave. It's been passed by voters in very hotly contested purple states like Nevada, Michigan, Arizona, proving it's popular because it deals with a real and pressing life issue. Last, I don't know if you've ever heard of AmeriCorps, but it's something I'm kind of fond of. I ran one of the first national AmeriCorps programs for the Ivor Dream Foundation. I met my wife through AmeriCorps. And I think it is just a remarkable way of addressing and healing the division in our country. By giving mostly young people, but people of a very wide range of ages, the chance to put the phone down, get outside your home community, and engage in service that both gives you skills and experience, that exposes you to people of a broad range of different backgrounds and experiences, and allows you to earn tuition money for college. I worked hard with President Biden on a proposal that would have allowed young Americans to earn a 4-year university degree through 2 years of full-time AmeriCorps service. I think that is politically sustainable. The second most popular federal program of all time is the GI Bill, because it is an earned benefit. And I think the small number of folks currently experiencing AmeriCorps who are wildly positive about it would benefit from having 3 or 4 times as many young people have the chance to help veterans, to support drug treatment organizations, to do environmental remediation, to help build affordable housing. AmeriCorps is in some ways the best of America because it's literally run from the bottom up Exactly what programs are going to be done are determined by nonprofits, local governments, corporate sponsors and volunteers, and then the federal government comes in with the supportive funding, but it is locally led, locally driven, and gives a chance to grow and to understand what it means to be American. I did have a significant bill with Senator Roger Wicker of Mississippi to create the CORE Act in response to the COVID pandemic. We need moments of hope to encourage us to be willing to risk doing the work of justice for others and to look outside just narrowly our own opportunity and our own security. And I think one of the great things about AmeriCorps is it gives folks a chance to earn a college education, to get out of their own community and circumstance, and to find themselves by losing themselves in service to others. So let me end where I began. We're in a moment right now where the lack of justice on the ground in the world recently in Minneapolis, I think, has seized the national attention and has produced a debate about what's necessary, what's required for us to do justice. Justice done correctly makes a tangible difference in other people's lives. It's circumstance changing. There is injustice at home and abroad, here in the United States and in nations all over the world at just staggering levels. But we can see the possibilities of doing justice together. My favorite scripture passage, not surprisingly, is Micah 6:8. And at the end of the day, seeing the positive opportunities for justice, how healthcare programs and anti-poverty programs, how affordable housing, environmental justice, and good management practices can transform lives and can help create generational opportunity and help deliver security in a meaningful way, all while also doing justice, I think is not just the work of the Democratic Party, but the call of the American people. So thank you for an opportunity to talk with you for a few minutes about this today. And now I look forward to your questions.
Thank you so much, Senator. Let me give you the run of show from here on out. He is on a very tight timeline and wants to have a little bit of time to, say hello to you individually. So we're going to keep this short. You're going to have to talk really fast. And those of you who have questions can come up to the microphone. We're going to take a couple of them. But first, I get two opening questions. The first one is going to be wonky because we're at a policy school. Yeah. All right? So you talked a little bit about bad policy and good policy. We saw what I think is the worst policy that we've ever passed in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. It made fundamental changes to the safety net. Programs that have been around more than 50 years were gutted and fundamentally reformed with hardly any debate at all. Right. I am an economist by training, and I can tell you that these reforms are going to be bad for the economy and bad for people. Why did you do that? No, not you, of course, but no.
Senator Coons was a no.
But do they not know? And what kind of opportunities are we going to have to roll back some of that before it's implemented in all of its filth?
You described this as a wonky question. I will briefly remind everyone here that in the Senate as of today, we have a filibuster, which means you cannot pass substantial legislation without 60 votes. While there was some active debate in the last Congress when my party was in the majority about maybe doing away with it, now I'm really glad we didn't. Yes. Because we had a view, a vote, and a role in the appropriations bill the president just signed in rejecting his cuts to the CDC and the NIH, to the NSF, to education, hundreds of different programs that in his budget, had it been enactable with 51 Republican votes, yeah, would have continued that. Because of this obscure thing called reconciliation that's pursuant to the 1974 budget reconciliation. I know, this is your love language.
Yeah,
okay, yes. Yeah. I'll just take a quick look back at the last two cycles. When Democrats had the opportunity through reconciliation to pass big legislation, what did we use it for? Health care. Expanding access to health care to millions of Americans. And then reducing prescription drug prices and fighting climate change.
The last 2 times Republicans have used it, what did they use it for? Tax cuts, tax cuts. And
Wait, tax cuts to middle-class families?
tax cuts to
No?
the very wealthiest
Okay,
Americans
just checking.
and the most profitable companies. And this time they claimed they were paying for some of those tax cuts, although it adds trillions to the deficit. So at least in their frame, the $150 billion, the extra money given to ICE for domestic enforcement was paid for by cutting health care from seniors, the disabled, newborns, and low-income Americans by slashing Medicaid. So I know of no faith that teaches that the right way to deliver economic opportunity to the wealthiest is by taking food and health care away from literally the most vulnerable. I don't understand how they made that values balance. And I'll say Senator Tillis, who's an actual friend, looked hard at the numbers, studied it, and said to each of the members of his caucus, I know what's going to happen. People in my home state of North Carolina are going to lose health care. They're going to lose mental health. They're going to lose substance abuse treatment. They're going to lose help for newborns. I'm not voting for this. And he didn't. And now he's not running for re-election. Yeah. This was bare-knuckled politics.
Don't forget SNAP and all of that. That's, I feel really, I'm just still going to encourage
folks
to
the hunger
pull.
reference. Yeah.
Well, yes. Oh boy, we're really running short on time.
Are we?
We are, exactly. But if there are questions, you can come and line up on the thing. My second question is because we're at a Catholic university. So surveys show that Americans who attend church regularly are much more likely to identify as a Republican, with black churches, of course, being the major exception. When you talk with Christians who lean Republicans, what do you hear about why they feel more at home in the GOP? What do you think Democrats have failed to understand or communicate about their relationship to our policies and the policies of the Democratic Party?
First, we hide our faith actively. This Wednesday, so I'm a regular participant in the weekly bipartisan prayer breakfast. Most of the last 6 months, there's more Democrats than Republicans going to this weekly prayer breakfast. If I tell you who the Democrats are, most of you will be surprised, because you don't think of Democrats as being people who pray regularly, who read scripture regularly, and whose decisions, whose policy decisions are informed by their faith. I remember campaigning with and for Senator Sherrod Brown in Ohio the last time, so this was 6 years ago. And I really got to know Sherrod through a prayer group that Faith and Politics put together. And I got to introduce him. And I'm talking to a room of about 100 of his longest, most faithful supporters. And I said that. And I could see eyebrows. I was like, yeah, this prayer group that Sherrod hosts in his hideaway in the Capitol. Second one, we did 3 events together. Second one, I gave a little more detail about like how that informs his strong commitment to organized labor. The history of Pope Leo being the Pope who really moved the Catholic Church to supporting organized labor. And the third one, Sherrod said, I'm a regular participant in a prayer group. It's hard for Democrats to say we are people of faith because we've moved into a space where, because of the embrace of the right end of the evangelical community of an anti-human rights and anti-LGBT posture and an anti-choice posture, making those defining values issues has made many progressive people or Democrats think that that's faith. That does not define faith. The gospel is a document that is not a clear policy prescription. There's not a single verse that says, thou shalt give more tax cuts or thou must increase SNAP. But it does lay out hundreds of references to the poor, the marginalized, the imprisoned, the foreigner in your midst, and the widow. To me, from Isaiah 61 to Luke 4, there is a clear trajectory. So,
okay, we're going to get 3 questions.
Yeah.
You have to ask them quickly. You'll get one
I'll
answer,
It's all good.
and then you will
Flee.
Well, I think you're going to do a little hobnobbing and then flee.
I'm teasing.
Yes.
Thank you for coming, sir. With our national reputation currently being in a deteriorating state, what words of wisdom could you offer to the many Americans who are living in foreign countries amongst the populace? What could they do to help re-inspire the ideal of what America represents?
Thank you. And you want me to listen to all three questions?
Exactly. We have to do 3 questions.
Got it.
So yeah.
And I'll answer
Yeah,
them.
and so we'll just sort of take them. Yeah, and you can choose.
So,
you can
yeah.
choose. Do you need a piece of paper?
I got it.
Thank you for your time. I share your hope for our reshaping and sort of reframing of the Democratic Party to make it even better and as best as it can be for all people of this country. I'm curious to know where you think there might be the most sticking points or obstacles for members of the Democratic Party in your vision for sort of the reshaping of the party, and in contrast, where you think there are the most opportunities for bipartisan partnership in your vision for the future of this party. Thank you.
Right. Thank you. And then 3.
Good evening, Senator. I haven't actually gotten to meet you yet, but I'm one of your law clerks for the Senate Judiciary Committee right now. So, pleasure. My name is Hope Pullman. And my question is in regards to, you started your speech talking about justice and about the lack of justice that has been occurring within Minnesota and with immigration. And I was wondering what your thoughts are on the amendment to the 1983 bill to expand it to include the option to sue federal officers for violations of the Constitution.
Thank you. So, Hope, as you know, the precedent, Bivens versus 6 unnamed federal agents, expanded accountability for federal agents for the violation of civil rights, which is what 28 U.S.C. 1983 provides at the state and local level. As someone who, as county executive, was responsible for the second largest police agency in my state, I paid very close attention. If we ever had allegations of civil rights violations, abuse, misuse of force, mistreatment of prisoners, that sort of thing, we had liability under Section 1983 and a vigorous and capable litigating community that enforces community rights. I think 1983 is a great tool. It gets the attention of not just the chief of police, but the principal executive in any entity. And any police department that has a long list of 1983 actions gets under scrutiny pretty quickly. We should restore Bivens to its previous strength and quality. Jurisprudence around Bivens has been taken by this Supreme Court in a really bad direction. As we craft and narrow exactly what our demands are, I shouldn't put that in air quotes, our demands are, which is happening now. The challenge here is whether we get too technical. So the way I have been framing it is federal agents should serve in a democratic republic under the same standards as the vast majority of state and local police. Now, if that means masks off, body cameras on, great. But it also means transparency and accountability. Underneath that, every state and local officer I've ever worked with has 1983 accountability. So I do think implicitly that framing that we're delivering now as a caucus, both Senate and House, includes the return to 1983 liability for federal agents. Thank you for the question. Thank you for being willing to be a law clerk. I was a law clerk for some guy named Joe Biden, and it turned out okay. So thank you. Opportunities.
This is our time, so.
It's all good.
Okay.
Yeah, I know. I'm going to be late. And Jose's looking at me with the
I
with
know.
the dude.
He's giving me that look, too.
Opportunities for bipartisan collaboration and opportunities, things that will be sticking points as we try to find a new future. This will be unpopular. I think one of the challenges, if there is, and I'm not yet convinced there will be, if there is a significant electoral swing against Trump and Trumpism, I can hope, I can pray, I can work for it, but believing that this moment is going to stick all the way through 2 cycles assumes that Trump is not incredibly agile and utterly unmoored by any particular commitment. Just briefly, in the arc of his campaign, where did he come up with no tax on tips and no tax on Social Security? Out of thin air, in front of a rally. It stunned his own policy people. His own party didn't want to do it. They barely did it in the bill, but it helped him win. Here's a guy who is just completely disconnected from any of the traditions of the Republican Party. He'll take whatever position helps him get out of trouble. And so, A, don't assume. B, I think because of how awful so many of the things he's doing are. The corruption, the cruelty, the violation of law, going after universities, journalists, foundations, like violating the very, what it means to be a democracy, which is to have restraints on power and a separation of powers. There will be a very strong temptation on the part of Democrats, should we win, to exact vengeance. We need to restrain ourselves and not overperform in that direction, because part of what has made the last 20 years challenging at home and abroad is the swings have gotten bigger and bigger to the point where there may be no middle left. If there is no consensus core left, then it just becomes a contest for raw power. I have an ancestor who fought in the Civil War. I grew up studying it closely. It's how you resolve differences when you've given up on compromise. Quick test. How often do you say of some recent development, some vote, some policy, or some decision, that's just crazy? Every day? 10 times a day? What does it mean when you say, in my role, Senator so-and-so is just crazy? Or when you say of your colleague, your classmate, your coworker, oh, she's crazy. What that means is beyond reason. I can't reason with them. It's not worth trying to persuade them because they've left the world where compromise and persuasion works. So the next time you hear yourself saying so-and-so is crazy or such and such is crazy, which I do every day, and I say this and then the next day I go, yeah, right, I did say that last night. You're saying that you are unwilling to consider working with that person. That's happening more and more and more, and I think that puts the very possibility of restoring the restraint that is at the core of a democracy at risk. Last, I got to, the blessing of my time first in Kenya and then in South Africa was to see America and Americans from outside in. The news in Kenya began every single night. First, habari za jioni. First, it would begin with a story about President then Daniel Totore Arap Moi and what he had done that day. And the second and third stories were about whatever America had done that day. And it hit me like a thunderbolt. There's no evening news here that talks about what happens in Kenya every day. But what we do impacts the world, positively and negatively. As a nation, we have mostly been held in high regard by much of the world, and we are losing that quickly. I led a bipartisan delegation to Denmark just 2 weeks ago and was there as President Trump amped up his threats of violence against a NATO ally and his threats of tariffs against trusted partners. And the hardest moment of that trip was when our group went and laid a wreath at the memorial to the 52 Danes who fought alongside Americans and died. And then our president stood up and said, "We never asked for anything from NATO, and they never did anything for us." How do the loved ones of those who died feel about that? That utter lack of gratitude or simple decency. I do think we're at a place where Americans abroad can and should. Don't just put a Canadian patch on your arm and say, yeah, I don't know. But own it. Tempting, I know.
People do.
I know. I was talking with a Canadian friend who said, yeah, our embassy is getting a lot of visits. Don't give up on us. Don't let this moment and this president define us. We have awful chapters in American history. He is trying to erase them, from national park signs to websites to teaching. Erasing the huge ugliness of our history that we have mostly overcome through huge sacrifice is to disrespect the service and sacrifice of those who did that. I was really brought into politics in Delaware in no small part by a Tuskegee Airman whose willingness to believe in America despite all evidence to the contrary, growing up in an apartheid Delaware, challenged and inspired me every day. That his service and sacrifice has been erased from the DOD or DOW website is a small but unspeakable offense to his memory. Fight for who we have been, fight for who we are, and fight for who we should be. Because for much of the world, what has defined America to them is our willingness to challenge and question ourselves, to struggle against the meanness and shallowness and brutality of some of our chapters, and to actually be better than we have been. If we abandon that project, then we dishonor that history and we give up on that future. Thank you for a chance to be with you tonight.
Thank you, Senator.
I hope you all enjoyed it, and I look forward to saying hello.